All right, welcome to Best of the West. I'm pinch hitting again. I'm Stephen Willis here in place of Kevin Bohannon. Here with Jake Thomas. We're going to talk a little bit about football today. We're going to have a good time. We're going to talk all about the Western Division of the SEC. How you doing, Jake?
Doing good. Glad to be back with you, Steven. And, hopefully Kevin continues to improve and he'll be back shortly with us, hopefully.
Yes, absolutely. It's been a couple of weeks. It's been a slow
hmm
process getting him back, but hopefully he'll be ready pretty shortly.
hmm
I do want to talk about a little bit. It might be a little bit out of order, but today we're going to do. Let's see. We're going to talk a little bit about the quarterback competitions around the league. We're going to
hmm
talk about the 100% vaccinated program at Ole Miss, the only college or pro program that has hit 100%. And
hmm
we're going to talk a little bit about Alabama camp, and we'll go into a little bit different things as well as this goes on. We'll kind of go wherever the wind takes us after that. But we're going to talk about quarterback races first.
hmm
And one thing is funny. I don't know if you noticed this, and Kevin's not here. He could talk about it a little bit better than you can. But did you see the picture on Twitter about the meme for KJ Jefferson?
I didn't see it.
No, he came out there. He was wearing a wife beater, and it said, it was a meme. It was like, this is absolutely a 42-year-old father of four.
I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
fantastic. Apparently, KJ Jefferson's having a really good fall camp and doing some really good things in that Arkansas offense. So I'm looking forward to see what he can do. When he came out of North Panola, I had concerns about his throwing motion. So I want to see how he can throw the ball and how that looks, him going downfield, how they fix that. I know in the running game that he's going to be a weapon. He's about 230 pounds. He's a
Wow.
big kid. And Arkansas, it could be like a plus Felipe Franks if this kid throws the ball effectively.
Yeah. And I mean, including all of these races, especially freshmen coming in who have a chance to win the job. How they going to adjust to playing an SEC type defense. That's another key that I'm going to be looking at. Now, some of these guys, kind of like LSU, they have two outstanding quarterbacks they can rely on that have played against SEC type defenses. So, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Absolutely. And whenever, like, one of the reasons I'm hesitant to essentially crown Texas A&M because there's a lot of people that want to talk about how Texas A&M is back, and the reason I am hesitant to do that is the quarterback race that they have. We all
hmm
learned from Auburn and Jeremy Johnson to wait until
Yes.
you actually see him perform before anointing him into something he is not.
Right.
Texas A&M could be an 8-win team, they could be a 12-win team, and it's
Mhm.
purely behind center which way that's going to go.
Absolutely, and it's interesting. They could go two different ways. Calzada, he's kind of like a Jimbo Fisher type guy. That's what Jimbo has had in his system. But they can go to Haynes King, who can scramble out of the pocket, make some plays outside the pocket if he needs to. So they got two options there that one will fit Jimbo perfectly, and then the other will well, he had to get out of his little comfort zone a little bit, but it could be effective as well.
Yeah, I think Haynes King has the advantage going into this.
hmm
Running the ball, he's like a plus Kellen Mond. I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah, he's absolutely quick. It's going to depend on the passing game, on
hmm
whether Calzada can get him. Does that running game, is it a bonus? Is it a plus? Because the passing game, there's a minimum level that you need to hit.
Absolutely. And you have CJ Spiller behind either one of them, so you could I think they start out with Kent State. So
Hmm.
you could essentially see both of them play that game, and obviously I think I have mentioned it a couple of times. You just hand it off to CJ Spiller, and then you can figure out who the quarterback's going to be. Because as long as he's running the ball, you should be fine. You don't. You may need 150 yards passing out of a guy, but if CJ Spiller continues to be the stud that he is, they won't need to pass it too much, obviously.
Yes, it's Isaiah Spiller, by the way.
Isaiah Spiller. Yeah, I'm
Yes,
thinking about CJ.
CJ.
Yeah,
Yeah, CJ
yeah,
played at Clemson about a decade ago.
yeah. I can remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a good remember for sure.
right. Hmm.
But I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like against Kent State.
Hmm.
How they come out. If they throw for 150 yards against Kent State, Texas A&M has problems. It doesn't
Right.
matter if Haynes King's the quarterback, if Calzada's the quarterback. They need a 250 to 320 game passing against Kent State as it starts. Now, Kent State is not the 1-11 group that strolled into Oxford in 2016. This team has gotten progressively better over the
They
years, and
have.
now they're a decent MAC team.
Hmm.
So it will be interesting to see. This is not necessary. I'm not saying this is a test for A&M. I'm not saying we even need to worry about this for A&M. I'm
Hmm.
saying this will be a good measure for the quarterback competition, if it is in fact still a competition. But like I said, if they throw for 150 yards in the first game, A&M's got problems.
They're going to have a big issue on their hands. Like you said, regardless who the quarterback is.
Yeah. LSU is going to be Max Johnson. Miles Brennan actually broke his arm in a fishing accident.
Ooh, I did not know that.
To where Max Johnson basically won the job by default. Miles Brennan is, I think he had surgery on it shortly after. So it was a fluke accident. It was one of the most Mississippi stories I've ever heard. But Max Johnson is the guy that I'm not going to say rooting for, but the guy that I thought would win that job. He has a higher ceiling, has higher upside.
Hmm.
The only thing Miles Brennan did is raise up the floor. But after 4 or 5 games last season for Max Johnson, I think that floor is actually pretty close to level.
Yeah, me and Kevin actually talked about on the first the episode here that Max Johnson, when he was in, it seemed like the offense, kind of gelled a little bit better than when Miles Brennan was running it. But I guess the question now is who's the backup to Max Johnson if something happens to him?
Yeah, because TJ Finley's over in Auburn, and we'll
Right.
get to Auburn in a little
Hmm.
bit,
Hmm.
but it's going to be interesting. There's no Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. There's
Right.
no Thaddeus Moss.
Hmm.
The two players that really made the 2019 LSU team go from good to elite
Yeah.
were those two players. Those guys aren't there. Boutte is a heck of a wide receiver. They have some other players in Palmer, and there's some things that they can do. But wasn't necessarily a scheme thing. It was the fact that 5 receivers could go out and everybody was elite and somebody was going to get open, and Joe
Right.
Burrow was a master inside the pocket.
Burrow was probably one of the greatest quarterbacks in a while, under
Hmm.
that system that I've seen. I mean, when he come in, he kind of struggled, but then they brought in Joe Brady, who just did wonders for that program and to Joe Burrow, and it changed his game and everything. It was amazing to see that run that they had.
Yeah, the advent of the second level RPO and
Yeah.
the use in that LSU system, that space between the linebackers and the safety, that 2019 LSU team just made a living off of that space. And you see things like Lane Kiffin using that in
Hmm.
modern football. You see a lot of stuff like that, and I'm not saying that you can't recreate it, but if somebody decides they're going to take that away and you can't run the football, you can't do it. If you take the R out of the RPO.
Right, and you've seen that when they had Leonard Fournette, especially against Alabama a couple times. They tried to run the ball way too heavily on Fournette, and Alabama stopped them, and they had nothing to fall back on. So it's good to have a balance, especially in today's time offensively.
Yeah. And at Mississippi State, Will Rogers and Jack Abraham competing. Jack Abraham got a little bit of a leg injury, so that
Hmm.
put Will Rogers a step up. Now they're saying the third string quarterback, there's still a competition. That's all coach speak. It's
Yeah.
going to be Will Rogers' thing. But I expect this in year 2 to look better in Leach's system. And then in year 3 and year 4, it's really going to be the best of what that system can do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I figured Will had an edge there since he started last year. Now that Abraham's injured, like you said, he's got to step up, a leg up now on the rest of the guys. But yeah, is he the biggest question to me is he the right quarterback for that system and an air raid top system? And I mean, he showed flashes last year, but he did throw 7 interceptions and and only had 11 touchdown passes. So using an air raid system like that, you have like 35 touchdown passes and like 4 interceptions. So he's going to take a step, the step up this year and see, just see how it goes. But I just don't know if he is the right quarterback for that system.
Yes.
Hmm.
I don't know either. Will Rogers did run the air raid or a version of it at Brandon. A previous quarterback in that system was Gardner Minshew.
Hmm.
So Mike Leach and that has history with those type quarterbacks. Will Rogers is a good guy. Ole Miss fan growing up, by the way.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and Luke Altmaier, who signed with Ole Miss, dad is the one of the team doctors at Mississippi State.
That's insane.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
it's absolutely bizarre.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
let's go over to Auburn, inside your state. Bo
Mhm.
Nix, TJ Finley, and all those guys. It seems like Bo Nix has kind of taken this job by the scruff of the neck.
Mhm.
Everybody's talking about improvement. But again, this is Auburn. This is the program that brought us Jeremy Johnson and expectations. I do want to see it.
Absolutely. And, you know, year one for Bo, he looked really, really good. Last year, he kind of struggled, and that's when everything went downhill for Auburn. Now they got Finley, and if Finley's breathing down his neck, and is still improving and is still, if I just don't see how you're going to keep Finley off the field per se. But and plus, like you said, I got to see improvement out of Bo Nets in year three. We'll see how he does. But Finley's right there for the taking, I believe.
Yeah, Bo Nix before the infamous 4th and 3 where he just threw a terrible pass into the ground. Basically, I think he spiked it in the ground
Yeah,
on a 4th down with the guy wide open. Ever since that moment, he's kind of been in his own head.
he has. Yep.
And there's some maturing that needs to happen. Matt Corral matured greatly between 2019 and 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So it can happen, a jump for Bo Nix to go between 2020 and 2021. But without that maturity and the understanding, and honestly, the cornerback mentality of anytime you make a mistake, just forget about it, Bo Nix will be in trouble. He doesn't need to hold on to stuff. He's one of these guys that a team can beat you twice
Mm-hmm.
because he's going to be in his head so much.
Absolutely. If you get to him early, like he's going to be rattled, and he's going to be rattled all game. And it's just going to be interesting to see if he can live up to the expectations, because he come down there with I mean a chip on his shoulder. I mean there was a lot of pressure on him, and the first year he delivered. Last year kind of took a step back, so he's going to have a make or break season, I think, this year, or TJ Finley's going to be your starting quarterback at Auburn, probably within game 6, game 7.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the season starts off. I think Auburn starts with a fairly easy game at the beginning,
Hmm.
and so there's a chance for him to build towards a crescendo. It's not
Right.
a situation like Alabama playing Miami,
Hmm.
even an Ole Miss playing Louisville.
Right.
They're not good, but there's still less margin for error than say Kent State or East Tennessee State or all those guys.
Yeah.
So let's move up the road to Oxford.
Hmm.
The quarterback there is no quarterback race in Oxford,
Right.
but there is a situation developing. John Rice Plumley is full time playing the slot receiver. He's
Interesting.
complete. Yeah, he's completed the move. Now it's one of those situations where if something were to happen to Matt, Plumley
Hmm.
would come back to quarterback. He would be the emergency quarterback, and not the mop up guys, which would be Kincaid Dent and Luke Altmaier. But still, it's taking over for Elijah Moore. Him and Jerry and Ely playing in the slot some.
Hmm.
They're going to mix those guys around and have a similar personnel group and line them up in different places. It could be like a mad scientist Lane Kiffin genius move.
Yeah. I love seeing what Lane does with his offenses, but they're talking about Corral could be the best quarterback in the SEC, and I believe it. I mean,
Mhm.
he's got probably the most experience, and just what he showed last year, he's very talented and he's thrived in that Lane Kiffin system. So and I thought Plumlee too. He made some good plays as well. So having him on the field is really going to help y'all too, I believe. So that's good to have him on at receiver, because you can do a little bit of mismatches. You could throw the ball to him, then he throw it downfield. Kind of like a quarterback that gets on or throws it to a wide receiver who throws it. So yeah, you have that potential as well in the offense.
Yeah, and you also have the potential in the Lane Kiffin scheme that they didn't really do last year because Elijah Moore didn't really fit that.
Right.
But the jet sweep game, John
Yes.
Rice Plumlee with the ball in his hand behind the line of scrimmage, all of a sudden on the outside, he's a weapon. And he's
Hmm.
something that linebackers have to worry about. And then tight ends are running wide open behind those linebackers because they have to flow. It truly is an impressive system. And I think this is the future of where college football is going. If you want to see what it looks like in 5 years and 10 years, look at Ole
Hmm.
Miss right now.
I agree. And let's see, week 5, I think, is when y'all come to Bama. That
Mm-hmm.
game is going to be, kind of like last year's game. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be neck and neck, I do believe.
Yeah,
So
I'm really looking forward to that. And
absolutely,
we're going to talk about Bryce Young at quarterback, but the third segment on our show is the Bama camp, and I don't want to
yeah.
do that. So let's
Mhm.
move on. Ole Miss is the only program, college or pro, that has reached 100% vaccinated.
That's amazing.
When I talk about my on my show, that I do daily, the podcast at 10 o'clock in the
Hmm.
morning, I talked about the competitive advantage that provides, the things that they don't have to worry about that other teams might have to worry about. That advantage going into a game week, that you don't have to worry about forfeiting games. You don't have to worry
Hmm.
about contact tracing and things like that. It's a major competitive advantage. I think Alabama's around 90.
They
So
were at 90.
they're
Hmm.
still in the same category when it comes to that. But the teams at the top of the SEC, they're the ones that are there. The ones that are
Right.
struggling anyway, they have all of this extra stuff that they have to deal with.
Absolutely, and that could get in your head as well, because if you have a string of COVID come through your team, you get Saturday morning, you're like, oh, we're gonna have enough to field a team. You've got to worry about that now. Ole Miss and essentially Alabama does not have to worry about that per se. So it's amazing that they are the first team to get 100%. When Saban said a few weeks ago, or he said at SC Media Days that Alabama was at 90. And I know I read one of your tweets today that there was a lot of talk about Ole Miss was only like at maybe 70 or something just a few days ago, and you said that was a bunch of hogwash. So,
Yeah,
I was like, wow,
there were people with sources all over the place before
right,
this came out at 100% that Ole Miss was
sources.
anywhere between 40 and 60. And wherever they were getting that number from, it wasn't correct
Right.
because it just can't come together that quickly. All
Hmm.
this can't really happen behind the scenes. So either your information is really old,
Hmm.
you heard something back in early June,
Right.
or you just made up a number. I don't know which it was, but it wasn't correct.
And why would Lane lie about all of his players being 100% vaccinated? I just don't understand why. Hey, what advantage that would be?
Lane with the media. Lane has been burned by the media, as you can imagine, over
Yes.
the years. He does not trust them at all. I
Hmm.
am convinced that there's even a effort to feed disinformation to the
Hmm.
media with what they're doing because they want the media to not know what's going on inside the Manning Center.
Hmm.
And that is absolutely the case. And every time, right now, the Ole Miss media is hitting about 20% on their rumors and sources and things like that.
Oh
More than,
gosh,
yeah, with nobody feeding them information. It's comically bad.
that is bad.
Yeah,
That's embarrassing bad.
it is pretty
But
bad.
man, but yeah, it's awesome. Like you said, I haven't heard about any, like you said, the other top tier. I don't know about like Georgia, Florida. I don't know what their numbers
I
are.
think Georgia's up there, and I think
Okay,
Florida is near the 85.
Okay,
I don't know
so
if they're there, but I think Georgia's there.
okay, because like you said, you got these smaller the ones that have struggled recently in the SEC are still dealing with low numbers, so they may have to deal with that come game day every Saturday. So
And I assume that Vandy will by the time it hits, they're not gonna tell us anything. They're not gonna report anything. But there's a vaccine passport basically to go to school at Vanderbilt this year.
oh wow,
Yeah, so doing that, I'm pretty sure they're going to hit their number as well.
yeah.
But places like Mississippi State, like
Mhm.
places like Auburn, like LSU, I need to. What's their number? Where are they going to
Right.
hit?
Yeah.
Because it could be October 23rd. Ole Miss could be 6-1, getting ready to play LSU, and LSU all of a sudden has a breakout, and that game
Hmm.
becomes a forfeit. Ole Miss 7-1 going into the end of the season, to where Texas A&M is all that's left. So it all depends on what that one was.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And then essentially, y'all could be undefeated,
Mm-hmm.
because like I have mentioned, Alabama's got some questions on the offensive side of the ball. Now their
Mm-hmm.
defense is sound,
Yeah.
but offensively there's some questions, and we'll get to that, like you
Mm-hmm.
said. But yeah, what's that one going to be for potentially for Ole Miss? But if you're looking at an undefeated, when season you get to LSU and they got a forfeit because we don't know what the numbers are, they got contract tracing all to hell, they they got forfeit. You got A&M left, and well, what's their numbers?
Yeah.
Who knows with them as well.
Yeah, it could be a situation to where let's say Ole Miss upset wins in Tuscaloosa,
Hmm.
and Alabama is rooting for some kind of a slip up, and the teams that they can get for their two losses, because if Ole Miss won that game, they would need two, would be
Right.
LSU and A&M, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden that A&M game just falls by the wayside, and
Hmm.
basically just give Ole Miss the West. And COVID just still, even though you're fully vaccinated at Alabama, you're still at the mercy of other schools.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to see everybody, get to that 100%, just so it we can not have to worry about this next year, especially, and I'm hoping, by this time next year, we're not having to worry about this COVID outbreak or this next variant, but because it just took the life out of football last year for me, kind of, I know Alabama dominated, but without any fans there, and I'm sure it was everywhere. It was just awful. Man, pumping sound is not fun. you know. So
The
I'm
Atlanta Falcons have been doing it for years.
well, yeah, that's true. So yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, it was just different, especially in other sports, like baseball or not baseball, basketball, especially the
Yes,
pumping sounds.
absolutely. Before we get out of here today, let's talk a little bit about the Bama camp. What are you hearing so far about the offensive side of the ball? How's Bryce Young looking? How's Bill O'Brien adjusting? What are you hearing?
Yeah, it's going well so far. Bryce has looked really really well. Honestly, I think if there's a question on, it's going to be who's going to be QB number two, behind Bryce, and because we got Milrow down there, who's a talented freshman coming in, and we still got Paul Tyson, who's been in the program for about I think this is year three, so I mean he knows the program, so I think Tyson will be the QB2, but they're saying that Milrow is going to be hard to keep off the field. So we'll see how they package that in. But Bill O'Brien, he loves tight ends, and he's got two talented tight ends in Cameron Latou and Jaleel Billingsley. We'll see how he game plans and for them. But and defensive side of the ball, it's a stat as I've mentioned. Henry Toto, who come from Tennessee, he's
Mm.
looked really, really well. Christian Harris and Will Anderson both had said this today that he has adjusted and it's like he's been in the defensive side of the ball for a few years at Alabama. So we'll see how they gel together. But there's not a lot of everything right now is not a lot of questions on who's going to be the two remaining offensive linemen because we got Saban had announced, I cannot think of the guy's name now, that one guy was going to be left guard. And so now there's still two openings, the right tackle and right guard. So we'll see, or center actually. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and Paul Tyson, by the way, that's like Bear Bryant's great grandson, right?
Yeah, correct. It is great. It's his great grandson.
Yeah, I understand that most people watching this or listening to this might have just heard the name Bear Bryant, but that's a pretty big deal in Tuscaloosa, even with Nick Saban patrolling the sidelines.
Yeah, Bear still has a lasting legacy down there, but Saban's kind of chipping his own legacy down there as
Mm.
well. But Tyson, I really like him, and I just don't know if he's going to have a good enough camp to beat Bryce Young because all early reports is Bryce Young is the real deal, but it still remains to be seen. So the 8-day game he went against the second string defense, and honestly, at Alabama, your second and third strings 5 stars pretty much, 4 and 5 star players, but they don't have as much experience. So he was playing against guys who hadn't been on the field a lot, so he had a decent spring game. So we'll see how he does. I don't think he's going to struggle against Miami, but he's going to have to get it together before Florida and definitely A&M and Ole Miss.
Yeah, and when it comes to Miami and Manny Diaz, you can expect exotic blitzes and things
Mhm.
that he's not seen before. He's a fairly slight guy, even if he's a runner. Or any concern around T-Town about possible injuries and him using his legs?
Yeah, in the spring game, he stayed in the pocket and only scrambled when he needed to. But if he needs to, he can scramble out and get a few yards with his legs. But the biggest issue with him is his height. I think he's like 5'10". He's kind of like built like a Russell Wilson. So, maybe will be just as talented as Russell Wilson, but that's the biggest issue with Bryce. But so far, it's worked out well in fall camp. So we'll just see how gameplay comes out because when you have 6'8", 6'9" defensive linemen, they got their hands up. You got a small window to go through. You've got to pinpoint that ball and get it right through there. So we'll see how it goes from there.
And any word on what the offense actually looks like with Bill O'Brien going through? I know it's going to look different than Sark. I know it's going to look different than Lane.
Hmm.
What does the Bill O'Brien offense look like?
Yeah, it's two tight end sets again, like it was when we had like AJ McCarron's and guys like that. That's what I believe. So far, they just been doing your base stuff, but I think since we got those two great, really good tight ends, you're going to see a lot of that. But Billingsley can play slot a little bit, so we may just go with the one tight end set and have him in the slot. It just depends because we're replacing two really good wide receivers. John Mechie's going to be number one. Bolden's going to be number two. But after that, you've got a lot of incoming freshmen. You do have a transfer coming out of Ohio State that will probably see the field. But other than that, you've got a lot of freshmen who, albeit they're hungry and they want to see the field, but they're inexperienced. So you shut down, Mechie, you're going to rely on Billingsley. You're going to rely on Bolden, and Bolden, he can be consistent, but it seems like last year when we needed a big play from him, he just dropped the ball. So I'm hoping his hands get a little bit better because if you double team Mechie and who's your second option for Bryce Young? That's the biggest issue right now.
And can Bryce Young find the second option?
Right.
Is he completely a one read guy, pull the ball down and run?
Yeah, kind of like Tua was.
Yeah.
Tua his first year, he only read his first option. If it wasn't there, he scrambled out of the pocket. But and you also, one thing I'm interested to see is how Brian Robinson and the guys in the running back room, how they going to complement Bryce Young running out, doing in the flats. Maybe he'd be a check down option because Najee last year was amazing at getting out there in the flat and catching, and then he just juked everybody or hurled them, whatever, to get some extra yardage. So how are they going to be productive in the pass game, as well to help out Bryce early on?
All right. I think we'll close it out there. For Jake Thomas, I'm Stephen Willis. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. And, as I say always, hotty toddy. Get well soon, Kevin.